Welcome to Bible Updates. Hit subscribe and tap the bell to stay tuned. Today's story comes from Jerusalem, a headline that surprised the whole country. In the middle of the ongoing conflict, Israeli soldiers found comfort in the last place anyone expected: soft Filipino prayers whispered in the quiet of a military barracks. Imagine this: a dusty outpost near Gaza. The air is heavy with tension, the kind soldiers carry when every day feels uncertain. Inside a dim room, a young soldier named Ethan rests his rifle against the wall and closes his eyes. His lips move slowly, not in Hebrew, but in Tagalog, the gentle, melodic language of the Philippines. Around him, the other soldiers sit silently. They don't know the words, but they feel the peace in his voice. The whispers float through the room like a warm breeze, carrying hope in a place where hope is rare. These prayers aren't about changing anyone's religion. They are about finding a lifeline, a moment of light in the middle of darkness. And somehow, that light traveled thousands of miles from the Philippines to this tiny outpost in Israel. The soldiers were drawn to it, the Filipino spirit, a spirit that bends but doesn't break, a people who smile through hardship, who offer kindness with open hands. As the words drifted through the barracks, the soldiers felt something lift inside them. Fear softened. The weight on their shoulders grew a little lighter. For Ethan, this moment wasn't random. His connection to the Filipino prayers began years earlier. Before he ever shared a prayer with his fellow soldiers, he had traveled to the Philippines on a humanitarian mission. A devastating typhoon had torn through Mindanao. He expected to find only despair, ruined homes, broken lives. Instead, he saw something that stayed with him forever. Families who had lost everything still gathered together to share what little food they had. They sang hymns in the night, their voices full of hope. Children ran barefoot among shattered homes, but their laughter still rose above the destruction. One day, Ethan met Leto, an old man weaving a roof from palm leaves. His house was gone, his possessions were gone, but he worked patiently, with a quiet strength that felt unshakable. Ethan asked, "How do you keep going after losing everything?" Leto smiled and said, "The storm takes the house, but not the foundation. Our faith is the foundation. God gives us the sunrise every day." Those words carved themselves into Ethan's heart. Back home in Israel, strength had always meant standing guard, staying alert, holding firm. But here, he learned a different kind of strength. The strength to bend without breaking, to lose everything and still find joy. And now, years later, in a quiet barracks near Gaza, those same words returned in the form of whispered Tagalog prayers. Words that carried the memory of a faraway island, a lesson in resilience, and a soft bridge between two worlds. It started as one young soldier's search for meaning, but in that room, it became something bigger. Hope speaking a new language in a land that has heard too many cries of sorrow. Filipino resilience was more than just survival. It was about choosing hope again and again, every single day. Ethan realized something during his time in the Philippines. These people weren't just enduring hardship, they were choosing hope, one sunrise at a time, with every meal shared, every hymn sung, every roof rebuilt. That spark of hope stayed with him. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, unforgettable. He carried it home to Israel like a secret flame, a lesson carved into his memory. True resilience doesn't just fight the storm. It grows from faith, from community, and from the courage to face tomorrow with open hands. Back in Israel, the memory of Mindanao would not leave him. In the barracks, Ethan saw the exhaustion in his fellow soldiers. They were brave, disciplined, unshakable on the outside, but inside they were weary. They were carrying the heavy weight of history and conflict, with no real place to set it down. Seeking comfort, Ethan began to spend time with Filipino caregivers living in Israel. He listened to their stories, tales of long years spent far from family, of sacrifice and loneliness, and yet, through it all, of unshakable faith. equals. Their faith was not just ritual, it was practical, alive, a daily tool for survival, for finding joy even in small things. Filipino Catholicism held both sorrow and celebration, always circling back to hope and redemption. Eaton noticed how these practices, prayers, songs, simple shared meals, offered more than just tradition. They offered connection, warmth, and a place to rest the heart. For soldiers worn thin by the demands of war, these small rituals felt like a lifeline, a gentle candle burning in the dark. At first, Eaton's exploration was a private journey. In the crowded, noisy barracks, solitude was almost impossible, so he carved out quiet moments where he could. Late at night, he would put on his headphones and listen to Tagalog prayers. He filled a notebook with translations and personal reflections, writing his thoughts in the margins, trying to understand why these words gave him comfort, why they felt like a hand reaching across the world to steady him. Then, one day, curiosity found him. Maya, a fellow soldier, noticed Eaton's late-night ritual and asked about the prayers. Something in the sound of his devotion reminded her of her grandmother's faith, the same quiet, unshakable faith that had always inspired her. Eaton hesitated at first, but then shared a simple, translated Ama Namin, our Father, with Maya. That moment opened a door. Maya felt something stir inside her, a soft cracking of her own cynicism. Soon, others became curious. One by one, soldiers drifted in, first to listen, then to join. What began as a private act of hope slowly grew into a small circle of connection, a shared search for meaning in a place shadowed by war. After long, grueling shifts, the soldiers would return to the barracks, their boots heavy with dust and their minds weighed down by fatigue. Slowly, they began to gather in a small circle, looking for just a moment of peace. In the center of that circle was Eaton. He began to share the stories he'd heard from Filipino caregivers in Israel, stories of sacrifice, hope, and the quiet strength of faith. Then he would lead simple prayers, at first in English, and then, hesitantly but with deep sincerity, in Tagalog. The unfamiliar language created a space where the soldiers could feel without overthinking. They didn't need to understand every word. The rhythm and warmth of the prayers carried meaning on their own. Soon, these small gatherings became a sanctuary, a place free from the rigid pressures of military life, a space for reflection, for hope, and for quiet connection. Before long, Filipino workers began to join in. They brought homemade dishes, the comforting scent of adobo filling the air, and shared their own stories. Together, soldiers and caregivers broke bread, shared prayers, and exchanged pieces of their lives. One by one, soldiers began to open up, sharing their own burdens and fears. In those moments, the barracks transformed into something extraordinary, a bridge between worlds, a circle of trust where exhaustion could be met with comfort. The gatherings grew. Tagalog hymns and the smell of home-cooked meals became part of base life. Even the military chaplain, Rabbi Benzion, came to observe a meeting. He had expected confusion, perhaps even resistance. Instead, he found soldiers who were relaxed, open and smiling, a community bound together by respect and empathy. The prayers flowed seamlessly, Tagalog hymns followed by Hebrew psalms. It wasn't about conversion, it was about connection. Eaton explained to the chaplain, "The Filipino faith gave us a new emotional language, a supplement, not a replacement." Rabbi Benzion saw the power in it and became an advocate. Soon, the military formally approved cross-cultural resilience workshops, recognizing the bridge that Eaton and his friends had built. What began as a few quiet prayers became a model for psychological support and cultural exchange. Prayer by prayer, story by story, a new kind of resilience took root. Years later, Eaton returned to Mindanao, this time not as a soldier, but as a student. The village he had once visited after the typhoon had been rebuilt. Resilience was everywhere, in the houses standing tall, in the children playing by the river, in the laughter that floated through the air. Leto, the village elder, welcomed him as if he were family. The story of the Israeli soldier who had learned to pray had already reached the village. Eaton stayed for 2 weeks, not to lead, but to participate. He worked alongside the villagers, repaired homes, and listened to their stories. He saw how faith was woven into daily life. Prayers before planting, hymns while working, community in every small act. Here, strength was never solitary. If one person suffered, everyone gathered to help. Hope was a shared resource, kept alive by the whole village. From Mindanao, Eaton learned that true resilience is interdependence, not isolation. Hope thrives when it is shared. He also discovered the Filipino art of grace, not grand or ceremonial, but lived in the small gestures of daily life, in hospitality, in laughter, in the way people offered kindness without judgment. One mother, worried for her son in Manila, summed it up simply, "I can only keep the light on in the window, so he knows the way back." Here, weakness wasn't shamed, it was met with compassion. True strength meant embracing vulnerability and knowing how to heal together. The villagers lived by a simple philosophy: faith, community, belief in a new day. It was a powerful antidote to cynicism and despair. This, Eaton realized, was the message he needed to bring home. Eaton's story was never about religion. It was about the search for hope. The cross-cultural resilience workshops that grew from his experience are still running, bridging cultures and fostering empathy. Soldiers who participate report less stress, more purpose, and a renewed sense of connection. The lesson is clear. Empathy is a strategic asset, and listening is transformative. This movement didn't grow from preaching, it grew from sharing stories, breaking bread, and simply bearing witness to each other's struggles. And maybe that's the heart of resilience, to find hope in unexpected places and to honor the people who keep that hope alive. So I leave you with this question: where have you found hope? Who has been your Nanay Eleanor? And how will you keep that light in the window for someone else? Happy journey, God bless.